Hello, this is Recap Reactions. I'm going to discuss the mystery film HellHole. A priest carrying a newborn baby enters a church on the eve of an eclipse in 1957, setting the scene for the film. It comes out that he refers to the infant as the seed of evil and intends to murder it. The infant's scar on the left side of the chest is then apparent to us. The priest reaches for a dagger and attempts to stab the child in the heart after concluding his prayer. However, he is suddenly stopped by police, who tell him to put down the gun. The priest pleads with them, explaining that he has to take these steps to stop evil from spreading globally. The officers shoot him dead because he fails to stop. The action then jumps to 1987, 30 years later, when a priest by the name of Marek shows up at the eerie-looking sanatorium. It is revealed that people who are thought to be under the devil's influence are treated at this facility. Upon entering the church, Marek is greeted by the chief priest. Referred to as Prior Marek's willingness to attend is much appreciated, as he explains that they have had difficulty finding assistance for their exorcism procedure. Following this, Marek meets Dawid, another priest, who welcomes him and starts going through his possessions. Since cigarettes are not allowed in the sanatorium, Dawid finds them in the suitcase and seizes them. Marek is then led to his quarters by the prior, who informs him that there is neither phone or electricity in this location. After expressing his wish that Marek will have a comfortable stay, he leaves him by himself. When Marek gets dressed in his room, we see that he has a scar on his chest that looks like it did when he was a baby 30 years ago. Then he opens a secret compartment in his bag to expose a flashlight, a weapon, and other objects that are forbidden in the vicinity. He also pulls out a newspaper with stories on 8 girls who have gone missing. It turns out that Marek is actually a police officer seeking information on the missing ladies who were brought here with the idea that they were possessed, not a priest. The priests all congregate in the sanatorium's main hall for a meal as Marek arrives. Meat that tastes and smells strange is served to him. He sees that the other priests are eating it just fine, so in an effort to avoid raising any red flags, he somehow consumes it. He later sees Piotr, the prior's aide, comforting a distraught blonde girl as he makes his way to his room. The next day, Marek receives a call to participate in a woman's exorcism at the facility. He recognizes the blonde woman from last night as soon as he walks into the room. She screams as the prior chants prayers while she is strapped to a bed. Piotr is in the room as well, capturing the whole thing. A little while later, there is a dramatic bed movement and a strong wind blowing through the room. The cross that the previous person is clutching catches fire as the woman lets out a loud cry. Marek feels uneasy after the exorcism and uses the restroom to re-energize. He is startled when the mirror breaks spontaneously a few moments later. He exits his lodgings and crosses the corridor in an odd manner after spotting a large crack behind the mirror. Soon after, he approaches an enigmatic room and goes inside, but Dawid stops him. This is the prior's room, the man says, and nobody is allowed in without his permission. Marek apologizes after realizing this and turns to leave. When he sits down to dinner later, the same weird meat is brought to him. Marek rushes to his room and starts vomiting because he is so repulsed by the flavor. He also experiences jaw pain, and he quickly extracts a tooth. He is shocked to see a bug emerge from his teeth and fly off carelessly. Later on in the evening, Marek succeeds in breaking into the prior's office and looks for case-related hints. He finds a wall gap that opens onto a hidden chamber with all of the exorcism videos neatly arranged within. He soon deduces that the exorcisms were entirely manufactured after seeing the films. There are mechanisms to move the bed, a fan to produce wind gusts, and a lighter concealed under the cross that can be used to light a fire. Even after it becomes apparent that the exorcisms are a hoax, he is concerned about what will happen to the girls. Marek takes down the crucifix from the wall and conceals it in a cabinet when he gets back to his room. The prior calls a prayer meeting of the priests for the following morning, asking Marek to preside over the gathering. The former pushes the latter to speak in Latin as he reluctantly gets up and starts reciting the lines. Marek does his best, but it soon becomes clear that his knowledge of Latin is limited. When the prior notices this, he finally stops him and asks Piotr to lead the prayer in his place. Marek is terrified to find the crucifix hanging again on his wall when he gets back to his room. He makes the decision to depart because he thinks the priests are watching him. Taking out his revolver, he sets fire to the newspaper pertaining to the girls who went missing. When he gets to the escape door, he finds it chained shut. Marek tries with all of his might to pry it open, but to no avail. A little while later, he sees the other priests preparing a grave and setting a casket. Upon entering the blonde girl's room, he discovers it is unoccupied. Marek understands that she was killed, but he doesn't know why. Piotr comes up to him at this point and extends an invitation to enter the confessional. Marek agrees and goes over there, where they have a private conversation. Piotr discloses that the church is keeping a tight eye on him because they think he is up to no good. He clarifies that there is only one route to get here and that anyone attempting to flee will be dealt with severely. Marek also tells Piotr who he really is, a police officer, and confides in him. He admits that the exorcisms are fake, but Piotr says he knew it already. He claims that the females are drugged. and that this is why they scream like they are possessed. He doesn't know what happens to them afterwards, though. Following their talk, Merrick goes back to his room and starts looking for any surveillance gear. He finds a hole surrounded by damp cement behind a wardrobe when he pushes it aside. When Merrick reaches into the opening, he discovers an odd bone thing with a moving eyeball. He is so repulsed by this that he begins to throw up a dark liquid. He sees numerous flies swarming within the liquid. Then, turning away, he sees a vision of his own face that is drenched in the dark liquid. When Merrick rushes outdoors in terror, he discovers that the blonde woman's coffin is empty. Before he can even register the shock of this revelation, Dawood covers his face abruptly and renders him unconscious. The previous scene and Dawood are in front of Merrick when he awakens, bound to a bed. He is informed by the previous that they have been monitoring him and already know who he is. Then they want Merrick to consume 4 portions of weird meat that they have brought out. Dawood starts to aggressively feed him while punching him in the face when he resists. The unfortunate guy gets sick as a result and passes out once more. Later on in the evening, Merrick awakens to find Dawood dozing off on a chair close by. He takes advantage of the situation to untie himself, but Dawood awakens before he can do so. A battle breaks out between the two guys, and Merrick ends up shooting Dawood to death. After that, he dashes to the kitchen to see what he's been eating. He is appalled to discover, upon opening the freezer door, the mutilated corpses of numerous women dangling on hooks. He eventually realizes that he has been fed the flesh of the women he was looking for. Piotr approaches him at that very moment and begs him to accompany him to the library. When Piotr gets there, he opens an old book and tells about the Chosen One. The Chosen One, according to the text, was born during an eclipse and has to be stabbed to death right away. He will consume 7 sinners and sip an innocent person's blood if he makes it out alive. This person will become a demon and create a new global order after completing this. Piotr discloses that Merrick was born on the night of the eclipse with a scar, making him the Chosen One according to the church. It is revealed that the sanatorium wants to finish this ceremony and worships the devil. Merrick is shocked to see the identical sign as his scar when he turns the pages. In spite of this, he maintains his credibility as a regular police officer and won't believe the story. After he says he wants to go, Piotr begs him to follow him into a hidden doorway so they may get away. But just as they're about to leave, Merrick hears something moving behind him. He soon discovers that priests are all around him, and they assault and carry him off. It comes out that Piotr was always lying to gain his trust and that he was never really on his side. The next scene finds Merrick restrained and surrounded by monks in crimson garments. Merrick's landing at this location was not by accident. As the previous reveals, it was they who provided him with anonymous tips about the missing girls. He discloses that they are part of a fraternity that holds that good and evil can coexist in harmony. They view people as evil beings deserving of punishment, rather than believing that the devil is evil. They have been waiting for his birth for 800 years, and the church is built around a well that leads to hell. The selected one's body will be taken over by the devil, who will emerge from the well once the rite is over. The priests then start getting ready to call upon the demon. During his 7 meals, Merrick had already eaten the flesh of the 7 sinners. The previous brings a virgin girl in front of everyone, because he still needs to consume the blood of an innocent. In a panic, Merrick yells at them to stop hurting the girl. But after a priest savagely slashes her throat, everyone begins to drink her blood. Merrick is tortured and coerced into drinking, despite his refusal to engage. The previous calls forth the devil several times after all the ceremonies are finished, but nothing occurs. Even though they have done everything the book says to do, nothing has changed. The prior sends the priests to their chambers after realizing their spell has failed. Piotr apologizes to Merrick and inserts a blade into his body before turning to leave. Then, because the well is said to be a gateway to hell, he gives the others the order to dump Merrick's body into it. Subsequently, we find the prior in his chamber, overcome with disappointment over his ritual's failure. He then starts drinking excessively to numb his pain. After a while, Piotr shows up and puts him to bed. The previous informs him that he is a good subordinate and expresses regret for the way things went down. To his surprise, however, Piotr suffocates his mentor to death with a pillow while accusing him of causing all the mayhem. The women's mutilated bodies are burned by the priests the following morning in an effort to remove any proof of their crimes. They are now informed by Piotr of their leader's passing. He sheds a few tears while seeming heartbroken. Since the chief priest has passed away, Piotr assumes the role automatically. Merrick wakes up in the well while flies are buzzing around his nose. He looks around and finds that there are bones all around him. He feels as though something is suddenly taking over. Then his body begins to burn and he screams in pain. Piotr is leading a morning service in the last scene when all of a sudden he chokes and loses his ability to speak. Then he lifts off the ground, causing his head to burst open and thousands of flies to fly out of his body. A short while later, the church is visited by the sabbatic goat, a demon. The priests attempt to flee in terror, but they are immobilized. Everybody in the church is upside down and suspended in midair. The demon looks back at the Jesus statue as it slowly rotates to face it, mimicking the crucifix position. The devil's incantation has succeeded in some way, though with unexpected results. The dead flowers are starting to rebloom, suggesting that although the living may not live forever, the dead do. The ground turns into a hell pit as the sky opens up with a rainstorm, marking the end of the film.